Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 21 First Multiplayer Scenario 5. This battle hadn't reached the level of desperate, as all 5 players hadn't lost any health points, but afterwards the strength of every player in the team could be seen. To put it simply, there were 3 players that were capable of clearing the level, and 2 players that were virtually useless deadweights. Wang Tanji's face and clothes had been splattered with a considerable amount of filthy blood that had come from the strange infant's body. Fortunately, the monster's body fluids hadn't come with any toxins or special effects, and had merely turned the odor on its body to one that wasn't pleasant to one's nose. As Long Aomin was blocking with his shield, his outfit stayed relatively clean, while Feng Bujue's contamination was, without question, quite severe. However, he quickly resolved that problem. Feng Bujue seemed to have thought of an idea beforehand. After finishing off the strengthened strange infant's variant, he turned his body and walked straight to a car. Opening the car doors, he ripped off a chair cover. Then went near a fire hydrant on the roadside. Using a pipe wrench to loosen the valve, water began to flow out from the inside. Treating the seat cover as a cloth, he then made use of the flowing water to wipe his face and his clothes and speedily cleaned up the mess on his body, while washing off the strange odor at the same time. Wang Tanji followed suit and also grabbed some sort of cloth from the car. After that, he squatted beside Feng Bujue and began to clean up the filthy liquid on his body. Long Aomin went to examine each and every one of the strange infant's corpses. Only after confirming that those monstrosities were completely dead could he let out a sigh of relief. He sat on a road curb to allow his stamina gauge to slowly recover. Loneliness and Lonely walked over and returned inside the illuminated vicinity where the street light was. Thanks, if it weren't for you guys, we would have most likely met our ends there. Loneliness said, his tone becoming a lot more modest. At the beginning, he even felt that he was more entitled to speak on matters as his rank was, at the very least, higher than the 2 rank 5 players. But he would now no longer question Feng Bujue's suggestions. Before reaching the Demon's Gate coordinates that I surmised earlier, Feng Bujue had long since cleaned up his face. While wiping his clothes and pants, he said, "I have to help each of you find a piece of equipment. Anything is better than nothing, even if it is of battered quality. The city in this level is enormous. I believe it's not difficult to find an object that can be used as a weapon on the way. If worse comes to the worse, we can simply pick up an iron rod, or even get Brother Feng use his wrench to dismantle some parts and use those as a weapon." Long Aomin then continued. "Oh right, you mentioned earlier that there were 3 possibilities concerning the darkness. The first possibility, the surrounding lights did not actually turn dark. Instead our vision and hearing had simply received some sort of simultaneous interference." Feng Bujue promptly replied. "Our eyes were blinded by the darkness and a strange noise reached our ears, but the surroundings remained the same." He paused for a moment. "If this is true, a question will arise. Is the subject that had been running the interference on us actually hiding nearby, but we can't see him, or is it conducting its operation from some remote location?" After hearing the words "nearby" and "can't see him," the remaining 4 people began to get a run of goosebumps. Only Feng Bujue himself seemed not to care. Furthermore, why did that monster transform at the end? Did the thing that produced these effects on us make use of the few seconds to give some sort of ability to that monster? After he finished wiping his bod and threw the seat cover away, "I do not want to dig too deep into this theory that's temporarily unverifiable for now." Let's talk about the second possibility, that the darkness actually exists, and that it envelops not just the whole city, but the whole world that this level is set in. At this point, Wang Tanji interrupted, "How can that even happen? Leaving the street lights aside, the moon isn't a light bulb to be switched off at will. No matter how it's done, let us assume for the time being that some power has succeeded in doing it. In that case, the incident that happened earlier could have been caused by a type of unknown darkness rapidly engulfing the world, which lasted for a few seconds. In these few seconds, it's highly probable that under the effects of that darkness, the monster underwent a physiological mutation and became stronger." He put away the pipe wrench and sat down on the road curb too. "Personally, I am more inclined towards the second possibility, that this darkness is more similar to a natural phenomenon. Its target and its effects are ambiguous, and not specifically activated just to oppose us." Long Almin said, "What about the third possibility? The system amended the level immediately, after looking at the efficiency we exhibited in killing the 4 monsters." Feng Bujue replied, "Oh, that can't be true." Lonely said, "Loneliness and I had went through 2 instances before, and had never encountered such a situation. Even when our team encountered a monster, and defeated it quickly and easily. There's never been a situation where the difficulty of the level spiked suddenly." Translator note, in massively multiplayer online games, an instance is a special area, typically a dungeon, that generates a new copy of the location for each group, or for certain number of players, that enters the area. From Wikipedia. Loneliness added, "We have also met players whose ranks were close to Brother Long's before. The monsters at the start of the level were practically killed within seconds, which is why I said at the very beginning that killing everything while progressing was also a possible way to clear the level, as there was a rank 10 player leading the way." He was telling the truth, however, because the rank 10 player in the earlier level did not intend or act to specially protect them. They eventually died. I too believe that the third possibility is rather unlikely. Feng Bujue thoughtfully replied. In fact, the main reason he came up with this hypothesis was the ending in the previous single-player survival mode that the AI had created for him. At this moment, he had quickly excluded that possibility. "This is my first time in team survival mode and I am unclear about the actual situation. In that case, let's rule out this possibility." At that moment, Wang Tanji had also finished cleaning himself up. He stood up and said, "We will find out the truth in time, right? If this goes according to what Brother Feng says, darkness will still descend as long as the level continues, no matter which scenario it is." "True." Long Almin stood up, his stamina value had recovered a little. "Now then, it would be best if we settled the problem of loneliness and Lonely's equipment before we encounter the monster again, or darkness descends again." Feng Bujue also got up and said, "The route I am calculating to reach our destination will go through a police station. Once there, we can head in and search the area. There might be guns, batons. If we are lucky, we might even be able to find bulletproof vests, masks, and shields." He seemed unable to hold himself back any longer. "I've wanted for a long time to know what it feels like to hold and fire a shotgun." Long Almin felt nothing but fear after hearing this. Feng Bujue's tone sounded exactly like a psychopathic killer that's itching for a reason to kill. After discussing for a few minutes, all of them began to move towards the police station that Feng Bujue had mentioned. Even though the dark oppressive atmosphere was still present in the surroundings and they were unaware if there were still some monsters hidden in the shadows that hindered visibility, the 5 of them were still looking forward to the police station that Feng Bujue had described. One should know that ranged weapons were a rare commodity in the earlier stages of the game. Should they find a gun, particularly a relatively powerful shotgun, or submachine gun, even dying in the middle of the level would still be profitable to them. Chapter 22 First Multiplayer Scenario 6. After around 15 minutes of walking, the group of 5 arrived at the police station. The building was about 500 square meters, and its entrance faced the door, but one could also access the building from the side. That led to the parking lot. Feng Bujue went to inspect the side door first. It was a path used by vehicles. At the end of the path was a very tall wall, and the movable steel grate had blocked the path off. Looking in, all he could see was darkness. This way was sealed. When he went back to the entrance, Long Almin had already finished his inspection. The door was made of wood, and it was thick and sturdy. Something on the other side seemed to be blocking the door, and even if they pushed hard, the door would not budge. Feng Bujue shook his head to inform them that the side door would not work. Long Almin shrugged and said, "We cannot get this door to open either." Wang Tanji took a few steps forward to look at the building's outer walls. There are grills on the windows. Looks like it won't be easy to get in. Before he finished, his expression changed. "Wait, did you hear that?" Feng Bujue, of course, had heard it. He yelled, "Back off now." He rushed forward to grab Wang Tanji's shoulders and yank the man back. Long Almin and the couple had already taken a step back when they heard Feng Bujue's warning. The latter had just retreated from the door when a dull thud came from behind them. The wall next to the entrance was blasted open from within, and a large monster stuck its upper body through the hole. If Wang Tanji did not move away from where he was, he would have been buried under the rubble. "Okay. I think what I heard was its footstep running toward the wall." Wang Tanji's face was white, but his voice was not loud. After experiencing so many scares, he had gotten used to stuff that would normally raise his terror points to 50%, because his terror points had basically been hanging around 35% the whole time. Just like every mini-boss that cracked their way through the wall, the first thing the monster did after it showed up was roar. To Feng Bujue's surprise, he recognized this adversary. A zombie. Obviously, this zombie was much stronger than the one that Feng Bujue had encountered in his tutorial. Just from its physique alone, this one was twice the size of the one from his tutorial. Furthermore, the one from his tutorial had only managed to poke a hole through the wall, but this one had practically managed to crawl its way through. Wonderful. It has not only opened an entrance for us, the system has even placed a powerful monster here to inform us that there are possibly powerful weapons inside. Feng Bujue's lips curved upward as he examined the large, vicious monster. He made it sound like this was an opportune thing that had happened to them. "Brother Feng, it is only a good thing if we can successfully kill this monster." Long Almin was sweating. He knew that this was going to be a harsh battle. "Take this." Feng Bujue handed his wrench over to Long Almin. "There is no requirement to equip this weapon. Brother Long, I'll loan it to you. If you hit the enemy on its head, there will be extra damage." This? Long Almin hesitated. Feng Bujue had initiated a trade with him, but strangely enough, he did not ask for anything from him. In this world, there was a lack of trust between people. Excellent equipment was definitely a good find since they were still in closed beta, so one had to be careful before handing it over to others. If the other person got greedy and logged off, giving up the scenario, then they would be running away with the equipment. The original owner would not be able to do anything about it because they were the one who had initiated the trade. Even the system could not help them. "Quick," Feng Bujue said. Long Almin accepted Mario's wrench, and when he looked at its attribute, his expression shifted slightly. So far, Feng Bujue had given him the expression that he was a careful and cautious thinker. This kind of behavior, where he handed his good equipment to others for no reason, was not something that the man would do. Brother Feng, aren't you afraid that I might log off now that I have your weapon? Long Almin asked. Well, people who ask that question normally would not be that kind of person they described. Afraid? Feng Bujue laughed bitterly, and he grumbled internally, if only I could be afraid. Instead of afraid, he replied, being concerned that you might scam me is more appropriate. Honestly, though, at this moment, I am more concerned that our group might be wiped out. By then, the zombie had peeled most of the wall away and walked out onto the street. After it exited the station, the zombie looked even more domineering. It was more than 2 meters tall, and even in death, the thing was muscular. Its body was covered in a layer of semi-congealed blood, and the skinless face looked scarier than a skeletal head. This monster was a mini-boss, and the way to trigger its appearance was for the players to stay at the door of the police station for a while, searching for its entrance. Brother Long, help restrain its movement, and by some time I'll sneak around it and crawl through the hole to see if I can find any guns inside. If there is one, I'll rush back out to help, Feng Bujue said. Be mindful of your life points and don't go fighting head-on with it. When he saw the zombie, he balanced the battle result and possible loss in his mind. They did not have an item with a special effect like zombie must die with them. The things that could harm the monster were only a shield, a wrench, and a fruit knife. Fighting against smaller monsters like the monster baby with such close-ranged weapon was fine, but with an enemy like this zombie that was larger than Long Almin, things were not that simple. Therefore, the best solution was to increase Long Almin's ability and have him tank the zombie for a while Feng Bujue took the risk and sneaked into the station to find a better weapon. The appearance of this zombie made Feng Bujue confirm that there were better items inside the police station. It could be a skill card, equipment, or even a plot item. His plan was to look for it as soon as possible and return to deal with this monster. All right, leave this to me. Even if I'm killed before you return, I will find a way to return this to you, Long Almin replied. Then he charged forward to attract the zombie's attention, and the battle started. There's no need to make it sound so serious, it's only equipment. Feng Bujue looked rather unaffected. Facing the scary zombie, he did not show a trace of fear. He crouched down and moved quickly. He sneaked around the enemy and jumped through the hole in one smooth motion, disappearing inside the darkened police station. The two who stood further away were flustered. Mr. Loneliest and Miss Saddest were in the role of helpless victims. All they could do was stay as far away as they could so that they would not get in the way. Wang Tanji got close to the zombie carefully. The zombie's full attention was on Long Almin. When the opportunity arose, he would charge forward to slash at the zombie and then quickly slither away. He would only attack after he confirmed that he would be not countered by the mini-boss. Compared to the head-on combat style of Long Almin, Wang Tanji's combat style was more dependent on speed. Weaving in and out of combat, sneak attacking, his main purpose was to wear the enemy out. This kind of tactic was not suitable for equipment like blunt weapons or shields. A bladed weapon was his best choice. He did not need incredible strength, but fast speed. He delivered damage via accumulated nicks and slashes. These two were players who would go on to focus in fighting mastery, but even so, they had completely different combat tactics. The difference was observable in this scenario. One was familiar with the use of strength, while the other was better at speed. This was why the game did not have limitations like jobs. With the power of this system, a job would instead become a shackle that limited the players. In the later part of an online game, a personalized persona was important to the player experience. If everyone looked the same and had the same characterization, when they reached the highest level and their learnable skill became limited by jobs, it would be very boring. Any normal player could refer to the player guides, and they would know what to focus on for their jobs, which skill to learn, and which type of equipment to buy. With the current game setting, the system provided the players with massive freedom. First, other than stamina points, there was nothing like a character build. The life points and terror points were always shown in percentages, not numbers. As for how much damage an attack had done, how much damage defensive equipment could resist, there were no exact numbers to clarify that. Secondly, the skills and equipment were all randomized, and they were not limited to jobs. Plus, everyone had access to the same set of masteries. Players would unlock and improve the mastery that they specialized in. If they had the time, a player could even train all 6 masteries to S level. With such a high degree of freedom, other than the Terror Point system, Thriller Point's second biggest selling point was the title system. The system allowed the players to focus on their specialty after a series of combat. This system was the solution provided by Dream Incorporated to ensure the player's individuality after giving it much thought. The title was beyond the limitation of the 12 skill bars. It would give the player a special power, like Long Almin's Lighting Bash. The special power would not take up space within the skill bar. One's title would also grow with the player. Starting from level 10, the system would improve and correct the player's title following their progression. Each title would be unique, and even if 2 players shared the same title, they might not have the same special power. The special power might not even be an activated skill, it could be passive, or a support skill that added to one's attributes. When the open beta arrived, in scenarios over level 20, titles would be something like a business tag. After entering Team Survival mode, IGNs became less important because the players would check each other's titles first because that gave a clearer idea of one's teammates. For example, the intrepid charger, the blundering boxer, the sharpshooter, these were a clear definition of the characters. Of course, one could discern a player's ability from their title as well. After level 40, other than the typical titles, one might even see titles like Zeus, Superman, Black Widow, and so on. These were professional players. Back to the battle at hand, while Long Almin and Wang Tanji kept the zombie busy, Feng Bujue sought his way forward in the darkened police station. Chapter 23 First Multiplayer Scenario 7. There was no power supply inside the police station, so the place was dark but not to the point where Feng Bujue could not even see his fingers. The source of light came from the moonlight that filtered through the windows that were facing the street. Some of the areas in the station were better lit than others, which meant that Feng Bujue could see the general location of certain larger objects to prevent him from knocking into stuff. For the most part, however, the place was shrouded in darkness. Feng Bujue ran down the corridor after he jumped through the hole. This was to prevent himself from being ambushed should the zombie suddenly decide to turn back into the station. The other reason was because this stretch was relatively bright since the light shone in through the hole in the wall. The first floor was large, but due to the lack of lighting, Feng Bujue could not find the way leading up to the second floor at first glance. He searched through the dark and opened any doors and drawers that he could find. Unfortunately, he did not turn up anything useful. Due to the limitation of his sight, his other senses became more sensitive. Soon, he smelled a stench in the air. It was a thick stench of blood. He followed the smell to a darkened corner. Feeling around with his fingers, he found that the wall was sticky. He moved his hands downward and soon felt something. It felt like bones. Decayed meat. So, the head was pulled off. Feng Bujue was touching a dead body, but there was nothing above the body's neck. What Feng Bujue was touching was the spine that was exposed to the air. I thought the whole city would be completely deserted, with no trace of human beings, but there is a dead body here. So, there must be something interesting about this police station, Feng Bujue said to himself. The encounter with the dead body did not scare him. Instead, Feng Bujue continued to feel with his hands calmly. Of course, he was not trying to ascertain the body's gender, rather, he was trying to discern the victim's occupation from the outfit. Feng Bujue soon felt the badge on the lapel and realized that the body was covered in a police officer's uniform. He instantly started searching the body further. Several seconds later, Feng Bujue felt a gun holster, but unfortunately, it was empty. He trailed down the body's arm and found a gun held within the right hand. Item name, M1911A1 pistol. Element, none. Special effects, none. Equip requirement, marksmanship F or workmanship F. Remark, this is not a movie, so remember these 3 things. 1. Turn the safety off before firing. 2. Be mindful of the recoil. 3. Don't forget to load the bullets. Feng Bujue dropped the gun into his backpack and continued the search. He was overjoyed when he found a flashlight around the body's waist. He tried to flick it on, but there was no light. He touched all over it and only then realized that the glass on the flashlight had already been shattered. Feng Bujue sighed. Compared to the pistol, he wished more for the flashlight to work because the dead body was the biggest hint that the pistol would not work against the zombie. Since he already had the pistol in his hand, why would his head be snapped? If he had the flashlight, it would increase his speed of exploration in the dark. However, since that did not happen, he needed to continue rummaging through the darkness. In the end, he found a ring of keys from the dead body's pocket, and did not find anything else useful. Considering the time constraint, Feng Bujue had no choice but to quickly return. Even though the pistol could not kill the zombie, having one was better than nothing. After all, it was a ranged weapon. The dead officer might not be able to kill the zombie alone, but with Feng Bujue joining the battle, there would be 3 of them, with a shield, a knife, and a gun. With cooperation, there was still a chance for them to take down the zombie. Outside the police station, Long Aomin could not hold on any longer. Even though he was good at fighting and managed to block each of the zombies' attacks with his shield, in those 3 minutes, his life points had dropped down from full to 64%. Even with the shield, the zombies' attack power was too high. Long Aomin fought as he slowly retreated. He was hit, but even so, it was through the defense of the shield. The problem was that Ultron's fragment's reflex effect only had additional defense against long-ranged or laser dash type attacks. For this type of close-quarter attacks, there was no additional defensive effect. When it met the zombie's claws, the shield could prevent Long Aomin's physical body from being torn open, and it could deflect part of the offense, but the rest of the attack had to be suffered by Long Aomin's life points. The zombie's intelligence was low, it only knew how to wave its claws about, and did not know how to aim at weak points like legs or elbows. Plus, its attack pattern was simplistic. This was something that they should be thankful for, or else all 5 of them would already be dead. Furthermore, the zombie was relentless in the sense that it would not change target until its current target was dead. No matter how much Wang Tanji harassed it, the most it did was wave the man away after being injured, and sometimes, it even ignored him. This made Wang Tanji's courage grow, and he dared to attack even though there were some risks. Of course, his attack was weak. Using the fruit knife to attack the monster, it was pretty good that the knife did not break. Long Aomin also made use of those openings and managed to land a few hits on the zombie with the wrench, but only once did it land on the head. Even though the effect was better than Wang Tanji's knife, Long Aomin had less chance to attack compared to Wang Tanji because, most of the time, Long Aomin could only retreat and defend. Earlier, when Feng Bujue handed the wrench over to Long Aomin, his first consideration had not been whether the man would scam his equipment, but instead it was. Long Aomin had the physique to hit the zombie's head. Both Wang Tanji and Feng Bujue were only 180 centimeters tall. If they wanted to hit the zombie's head with the short wrench, they would have to jump up to do so. Even so, it was not easy for Long Aomin. He could have sacrificed his life points to attack the zombie, but since Feng Bujue had said that he would return as soon as possible, Long Aomin had chosen to believe him and drag this out as long as he could. Bang! The gunshot announced Feng Bujue's return. Everyone there sighed in relief, as if once the man returned, there would be a solution. All of them seemed to have forgotten that Feng Bujue was only a level 5 player. When he pulled the trigger, Feng Bujue had unlocked another mastery, the third mastery that he had unlocked after joining the scenario. This went to show the distinction of team survival mode. There were more needs for combat, and the addition of other gaming elements widely expanded the scale of the scenario. There was an extremely high chance for growth, especially for low-level players. A round in team survival mode, whether the scenario was cleared or not, would result in some form of reward. By then, Feng Bujue had already obtained level F mastery in general ability, workmanship, sleuthing, fighting, and marksmanship. The only mastery that he had not unlocked was medic. The zombie roared at the sky. The gunshot had clearly injured it because it turned its head around and changed its target. Feng Bujue aimed at the zombie's back. Before he took the shot, he had prepared as much as he could. He held the gun in both hands and made sure his sight was on the same level as the barrel. He knew that he was not a special ops agent in real life, so he abandoned the thought of attempting a headshot. If he made that shot, then he would be Robin Hood. Therefore, he chose to aim the zombie's back. The space was bigger and easier for him to hit. After all, this was a game. The system had a degree of aim correction on these types of technical weapons to prevent the players from having difficulty when using them. Therefore, Feng Bujue's first shot successfully landed on the right side of the zombie's lower back. After firing the shot, Feng Bujue understood the second reminder in the item's remark. Shooting was definitely not something doable by any citizen who had not received sufficient training. For example, if no one told you that you had to tighten your grasp when you fired the famous Desert's Eagle, and that it was best to straighten your elbow so most of the recoil gathered at the shoulder, perhaps, after firing the first shot, your own wrists would be twisted. In gangster movies, the gang members often raised their guns over their level to aim at the opponent's head. That might look cool, but in reality, this action could cause the bullet casing to land on the shooter's eyes. The recoil of Feng Bujue's M1911A1 was not small. After firing the shot, his arms felt numb. Thankfully, his stance was not that far off from the optimum, and his wrists were not that weak. With the experience from firing that first bullet, the rest became easier. He had a better grasp of the distance, his accuracy, and success rate. But facing the zombie that charged at him, he chose to turn back and retreat without hesitation. As the zombie turned, it gave Long Aomin the perfect opening. He had been battling the zombie for so long, so he had already realized that the monster would not change his target for no reason. Since it had started to chase after Feng Bujue, before he landed an attack, the monster would not go after him. The anger bubbling inside Long Aomin exploded. He leaped into the air, raised the wrench, and smacked it heavily on the back of the zombie's skull. A dull thud echoed through the air. It was the sound of steel making contact with flesh and bones. A big chunk was taken out of the zombie's head, and it formed a ghastly wound. But that did not stop the monster. If anything, it seemed to have angered it. It suddenly picked up speed, as it turned around to lash out at Long Almin. This counter happened too sudden for Long Almin to use his shield. He was hit on his waist, and that sent him flying. His throat felt raw, and the next second, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Long Almin was sent rolling for about 10 meters, and his life points instantly dropped down to 12%. He had trouble standing up. The only lucky thing was, due to the close distance earlier, the zombie's claw did not touch his body. When it attacked, the part of it that had wounded Long Almin was its elbow, so there was no claw marks on Long Almin, or else he would suffering from the bleeding status effect. The zombie used its hands to cover the open wound on the back of its head, and it screeched repeatedly. Several seconds later, it released the howl a predator used to scare its prey while glaring at Long Almin. The hit from the wrench had dealt some serious damage, and it threatened this mini-boss. When Miss Saddest and Mr. Loneliest saw Brother Long crumble to the ground, they quickly rushed forward to pick him up and drag him as far away from the zombie as possible. The zombie naturally would not let them escape. It immediately charged at the slowly moving group of three. Then, something no one expected happened. A shadow flashed across like lightning, as it moved to stand behind the zombie. Using his arms to grab the zombie's shoulder, he used that as leverage and leaped above the zombie. With a pull of his knees, he landed in a kneeling pose on the zombie's shoulders. Wang Tanji aimed to shock. Before the monster could even react, he stuck his knife right into the wound that had been created by Brother Long earlier. The knife pierced through the skull, and he started to rotate the knife inside the zombie's head madly. Chapter 24 First Multiplayer Scenario 8. To everyone's surprise, after suffering such a grievous wound, the zombie did not collapse, but raise its arm to grab Wang Tanji. In that second, everyone there was thinking the same thing. 1. It was already a muddled mess inside the monster's skull. 2. It was game over for Wang Tanji. Another gunshot. Feng Bujue's moved as fast as he thought. Plus, he had a deathly serious calmness on his side. He appeared 2 meters from the zombie and aimed at its head. Due to the close distance, the bullet shot through the zombie's skull, carrying some unknown substance with it as it left a hole in the zombie's head. The zombie finally stopped moving. Wang Tanji quickly struggled loose from its grasp and jumped down from its shoulders. Feng Bujue walked to stand before the zombie and aimed the gun right between its eyes. Very interesting. Looks like the monster has no use for the lower half of its brain. Then, he fired another shot. The bullet traveled through the zombie's forehead. This time, it did not even make a peep, it had gone completely silent. I understand it now. The creature is used to focus on the most threatening target, thus exposing its back to others. Even though the weakness is its skull, the system purposely placed its weakness at the front of its head and then gave it a high attack and high health. When Feng Bujue was speaking, the zombie was still falling. Actually, for the man, killing the monster was not that important, learning how to kill it was more important. Long Almin finally got the chance to breathe. He could still stand, but his face lacked color. Even though the others did not know how many life points he had left, they knew that he was not in a good state. The loss of Wang Tanji's life points was incomparable to Long Almin's. Of course, with his physical condition, if he was slashed by the zombie at 90% life points, he would instantly die. Just as they thought that they had beaten the mini-boss and had a chance to take a rest, the darkness fell again. Various scary noises crowded their ears, and the group's terror points rose. Everyone was thinking the same thing. What if the zombie got up from the ground, evolving into something stronger after the darkness passed? Several seconds later, the darkness dissipated. Like before, it left as quick as it arrived. Feng Bujue had already raised his gun and had it aimed at the zombie's forehead, but the zombie did not show any response. From the looks of it, my second possibility seems to be the correct one. Feng Bujue took aim for 5 seconds and put the gun away after noting a lack of reaction from the zombie. The darkness is part of the natural phenomenon, and the effect is probably to cause evolution in any living monsters. I suspect that this zombie has already evolved. Not only him, when we first experienced the darkness, all the monsters that are alive inside the city have been strengthened. Long Aomin, Mr. Loneliest, and Miss Saddest walked over to Feng Bujue. Long Aomin did not say much, but handed the man the Ultron's fragment. Feng Bujue accepted it easily, and the two did not comment on it at all. Feng Bujue said, "If we did not kill the zombie, I believe it would have undergone another evolution in the darkness. Then, wouldn't the scenario be too difficult? If the darkness fell a few more times, wouldn't the whole city be crawling with monsters?" Wang Tanji said, "In a way, that is the timer placed on us by the system. The city is so big, and the monsters inside the scenario are not gathered at a fixed location, or at least, they are not as numerous as the monsters we see in zombie moves. Therefore, the system used this method to prevent the players from taking their time and exploring the city slowly," Feng Bujue explained. "If we do not hurry, in a few hours, any random monster in the city will be as strong as a boss, and we'll definitely be wiped out. Then, what are we waiting for? Quickly!" Before Long Aomin finished, Feng Bujue had already shaken his head. "In any case, we have to be clear about the urgency of the situation. This doesn't affect our original plan." He looked back at the police station. "The zombie has been killed, and after fighting such a hard fight, I believe there has to be a reward. We should search the police station for any equipment and try to arm everyone. Other than that, we must find a way to recover your life points, Brother Long." Feng Bujue walked to the broken wall. He took out the shattered flashlight from his backpack and said, "I have a skill that will allow this thing to run normally for 3 minutes, but it will exhaust 100 stamina points. Since I had to rush back to the battle earlier, I did not search the place thoroughly, and I wanted to use my stamina points sparingly before the battle, so I did not use the skill. Considering the limited light inside the building and the singular flashlight, I suggest I enter the building alone. If I manage to find a more reliable light source, I'll come out and get everyone, and we can explore the place together. Of course, if anyone wants to follow me now, that also works, but your movement will be limited to the space where my flashlight shines on. There's no need. We'll just wait here for you to come back." "Wait, do you think we'll be afraid of you keeping all the equipment to yourself?" Long Aomin guffawed as he sat on the ground. "I can also make use of this chance to rest and restore some stamina points." Mr. Loneliest had his mouth zipped. During his 2 previous scenarios, none of the high-level players had protected him and his girlfriend, much less shared equipment with them. Now, this Brother Feng wanted to find some equipment for the team, so of course, they had no objection. Feng Bujue communicated with the 4 with his eyes and nodded before jumping through the hole again. But this time, he had a flashlight in his hands. After taking a few steps, he activated a hasty repair. While 100 stamina points were deducted, some matrix cube written in code appeared around the flashlight, and seconds later, it magically came back to life. Item name, flashlight. Item type, tool. Function, lightning. Remark, needs 2 D-size batteries to work. Even though this thing could be taken out from the scenario, it was not much use because once Feng Bujue's skill ran out of time, it would turn back to poor quality. And this was not a plot item that could be turned into a puzzle card. With the flashlight, Feng Bujue's search became extremely efficient, and it did not take long for him to find something useful. Chapter 25 First Multiplayer Scenario 9. The people outside only waited for a minute before they saw the whole police station light up. They looked at each other, and several seconds later, Feng Bujue walked out from the hole. I found the power switch for the emergency power source. The station appears to have an isolated power supply. This was definitely good news, and the five immediately jumped through the hole into the station. After the place was lit up, the scene inside was still quite scary. Other than the ceiling, which had survived most of the damage, almost all the desks, tables, chairs, computers, and water coolers were tipped over. There were what looked like wooden chips from broken doors and empty door frames. There was a huge blockage stuck behind the entrance, so even with a key, they would not have gained entry. On the first floor, there were 3 dead bodies. The body that Feng Bujue had found earlier was closest to the entrance. They ventured deeper, and found 2 more dead bodies in police outfits. They were both Caucasian males. The second body was slightly large. His large belly had a gash on the side, and the intestines had been pulled out a distance away. How long the intestines were, well, put it this way, you could use it to hang yourself. The third body was average size, and there was a crack on his left shoulder. The shoulder blade was shattered, and the wound extended to the left side of his chest. The heart that was supposed to be inside was missing. The game was surprisingly authentic in recreating these scenes, but at least it would limit the player's gag reflex. This was mainly done through the nervous connection system to tweak the player's sense of smell and taste, so that the players would not hurl during the gaming process. Wang Tanji was unfazed by this. He had already conducted plenty of autopsies in real life. Of course, this had nothing to do with courage, he had merely gotten used to it. As long as it was not a mobile dead body, even if the thing was disemboweled, he would not be afraid. However, if it was anything else like a ghost, ghoul, or even darkness, the man would be spooked. In fact, he acted no different from a young girl when he watched horror movies. On a side note, when a young girl had a big reaction when she watched a horror movie, that did not necessarily mean that she was afraid. It could be a scam, perhaps they would be afraid of stuff in real life, but it definitely did not extend to horror movies. Like when a young couple was watching a scary movie, the guy would usually have an unfazed expression while the girl would look scared. One would make jokes to loosen the mood while the other might scream once in a while. These kinds of things happen daily, and most of the time, it was the guy putting on a brave front and the girl acting. In reality, they both might have the same terror tolerance. That being said, a man who did not pretend to be brave would not look cute, and a girl who did not act cute was too brave. For the world to continue working, please keep up the good work. Back to the story and the 3 dead bodies. The body that Feng Bujue had searched earlier had nothing usable left. The one with the open stomach had a police baton and handcuffs. Taking a closer look, the handcuffs were cracked, and he did not have the key on his body. The baton was given to Mr. Loneliest. Even though it was a normal quality weapon, it did not have any equip requirements, and it was better than the man fighting using his fists. The third body was found inside a tiny cubicle, one that felt like a janitor's closet. They found nothing on him. Just as Feng Bujue was considering stripping the man down to check for tattoos and so on, Wang Tanji finally found a piece of water in his pocket. This was a clue to solve the puzzle, so naturally, it was given a great importance. Item name, paper note with numbers written on it. Remark, 69185. Other than those 5 Arabic numbers, there was nothing else. Feng Bujue looked at the item attribute for a few seconds and then threw it away. Hey! Brother Ju, is it really okay to just dump this? Wang Tanji asked. Feng Bujue took out the ring of keys that he had found earlier, and looked through them individually. 69185. 69185. Found it. He picked out the key that was engraved with these 5 numbers and pulled it out from the ring. Then he tossed the rest, only keeping this one, adding, This should be the only one we need. When he held the singular key in his hand, a new item attribute popped up on the menu. Item name, the key of fire. Function, used in fire seals. Remark, a key with magical energy, one of the 5 keys for the demonic door. This should be one of the plot items required for the main quest, Feng Bujue explained. If we skip this police station, after reaching the demonic door, there would be some side quests to lead us here. That's great news. This means we've saved some time, doesn't it? Wang Tanji said. Time? Feng Bujue answered. I guess so. Then again, the remark on the item mentions that there are 5 keys in total. Based on the system, after we reach the demonic door, the subsequent quest will likely require us to collect all 5 keys to close or open the door. Long Almin walked over from the other side of the corridor, saying, the stairs going upstairs have been completely ruined. We won't be able to go up. That's to be expected. Feng Bujue handed him the key, and allowed him to look at its attributes. The thing we are looking for is on the 1st floor. The young couple seemed to have found something. They discovered a medic kit in a certain room, and they carried it with them. Opening it, there was a roll of bandages and 2 vials of clear liquid. These were consumables. The function of the bandage was to stop bleeding, and the 2 vials were standard health potions given by Thriller Paradise. Item name, Life Points Recovery Potion, large, X2. Function, recover 100% of a player's life points. Remark, stack up to 5. Consecutive use of this item will lower its effectiveness. Feng Bujue understood the purpose immediately once he saw the remark. Limiting the stack number was to prevent players from bringing too many potions into a scenario. Since a backpack only had 10 slots, even if there might be a bigger one in the future, one had to leave space for equipment and other items. The limit on consecutive uses was to prevent players from having an over-reliance on these potions. Very good. If 1 full vial recovers 100%. Feng Bujue took out his single-use syringe and handed it to Wang Tanji. Doctor, we'll leave this to you. Wang Tanji was a smart guy, he understood Feng Bujue's meaning instantly. He picked up one of the vials and sucked out about 80% of its volume, and then signaled for Long Almin to roll up his sleeves. When Dr. Wang was administering the shot, Long Almin handed the key back to Feng Bujue. What is the meaning of the number 69,185? It's a simple puzzle, Feng Bujue answered. Using the English alphabet, 6F, 9I, 18R, 5E, fire. Even though the explanation was simple, Long Almin did not think that he would have figured it out on his own. Wang Tanji completed the shot. The shot recovered 83% of Long Almin's life points, meaning that his life points had risen up to 95%. As for the remaining 17% inside the vial, Wang Tanji first turned to ask whether Mr. Loneliest and Ms. Saddest had suffered any wounds. Both of them explained that their life points were full, so Wang Tanji tipped the vial back and recovered his life points back to 100%. Why did they not share the vial and take turns to drink from it? The reason was, the moment the players did the drinking motion, the item would instantly disappear. As the most common health potion, it was one of the main products on sale at the game's trading post. It looked different from the realistic items in the scenario. This was an item made specifically for the game. As long as the player made a drinking motion, even if it was just a sip, the system would categorize that as a full consumption. There would not be a sense of water sliding down the throat, and the vial would disappear instantly. This was to be used by players, not for them to quench thirst or counter hunger, so it had this setting. Feng Bujue had gotten lucky with the syringe, and only Feng Bujue, someone who was familiar with the game system, would realize that Wang Tanji and Long Aomin actually did not understand the purpose of their actions. They were simply following Feng Bujue's orders. It was not until they finished the scenario and read the game manual that they understood the reason. From the system's perspective, this was not viewed as a bug and even awarded Wang Tanji some skill points. Since the syringe disappeared after one use, the player had technically gained something from using something. One gain and one loss, it did not come from nowhere. One police baton, one pistol, one plot item, 2 health potions, and an item to stop the bleeding status, Feng Bujue murmured. After taking the quest to come kill the zombie, one might suffer from bleeding, so the bandage and the health potions are very necessary. The plot item has to be here, but there are only 2 weapons to kill something like that. It feels so little. Feng Bujue lowered his head, with his right hand on his chest and his left hand supporting his right elbow. I thought we would be able to find a room with weapons like we see in military movies or some confiscated steroids. Hey, what are you talking about? Even virtual drugs and sex services are banned by the system. Wang Tanji said. That's right. Feng Bujue's eyes shone. The fatty has been disemboweled, so why is his stomach still so engorged? There has to be something inside. Chapter 26 First Multiplayer Scenario 10. Brother Ju, that's so disgusting, Wang Tanji said. How is it disgusting? Feng Bujue jogged to the body as he replied. Whether in terms of thought or action, it is disgusting. Wang Tanji answered. You shouldn't act so randomly simply because of a belief that the system will provide us with a reward. Act randomly. Feng Bujue said. If there is *T or monster inside the belly, then I'll admit I've acted randomly. He squatted down next to the second body. If there's nothing inside, then it only proves that my analysis is wrong, not that I've acted randomly. However, if there's something inside. At that point, Feng Bujue already reached into the ghastly open wound on the stomach, and started to feel about with his fingers like this was the most natural thing in the world. Brother Wang, do you mind telling me what kind of work Brother Feng does in real life? Long Aomin's terror points rose slightly due to his teammates' weird action. He's a novelist, Wang Tanji answered with a dumb expression. Are all novelists so creepy nowadays? Miss Sadist overheard the answer, and she could not help providing her comment. Naturally, he's not a mainstream novelist, Wang Tanji added as explanation. Ha ha. Feng Bujue suddenly laughed, and it caused the other 4 to shiver. Look. Feng Bujue said proudly as he raised something in his hand. He really did find something amid the dead body's intestines, and it was an excellent quality item. Item name, the Eye of Hostility. Defense points, none. Effect, wearer can immediately discern a monster's hostile target. Equipment. Requirement, character level under 20. Not tradable after use. Remark, since you found this item, finders keepers. These goggles were created by a necromancer. He had made too many enemies in his life, and he wanted to use this to see any threats that might be hiding in public. Unfortunately, this accessory only allows you to observe one target at a time. When he was still alive, he once carved down this sentence on the top part of the goggles, when you're watching me, I'm also watching you. The equipment looked like common goggles worn by World War II pilots. The only problem was they had been pulled out of a dead body's stomach, and that was quite disgusting. See, I told you, the hints inside this police station were too obvious. There has been zero sign of human activity around the city, but there are 3 dead bodies here. There were items to be salvaged from the other 2 bodies, but only this one appeared useless. If all it could provide was a police baton, the system wouldn't have come up with such a memorable dead body. It could have just placed the baton in the corner of the room. Fine. You win. Wang Tanji sighed. We are short on time, so we should go now. We've spent enough time recovering and exploring. You've also scared our teammates. After leaving the police station, the five continued to walk down the street. Exploring the police station meant that they had completed a mission that they should have done later. They had also obtained valuable items from it, and that should have raised their morale, but Feng Bujue's peculiarity prevented that from happening. The fear that he brought the players was probably more intense than the scares created by the system. No matter how scary the scenario was, everyone knew internally that it was all fake, but if Feng Bujue intensified the fear factor of his actions, that was hard to imagine. After all, he was a real person behind this game character, and it was scary to know that such a person existed in real life. Look ahead. After another 10 minutes of walking, Long Almin stopped moving and pointed forward. The group looked ahead and saw a plaza. It was large, pebbled area. There was a large door sitting in the middle of the plaza. It was about 10 meters tall and 4 meters wide. One side of the door was shrouded in a black fog, while the other side was open. When the five reached the door, the system audio began. Current quest completed, main quest updated. They opened the menu to investigate. The earlier quest, search the city to find the demonic door, had been ticked, and 2 new quests had appeared underneath it. Find the key of fire in the police station on East 9th Street and find the key of wood in the shopping complex at South 15th Street. When the first quest appeared, the next second, it also had a tick next to it. After looking at the quest tab, Feng Bujue walked up to the large door. He studied it for a few seconds before commenting, "Oh. Looks like the mission is not as impossible as I thought. 3 of the parts within the magic circle have been lit up already. This means that we don't need to search for the key of metal, water, and earth. They have been maintaining the seal all this time." Wang Tanji and the rest walked over, and they followed Feng Bujue's gaze. The middle of the open door was surrounded by a cloud of inky darkness. It felt so thick that even sunlight would not be able to penetrate it. Around the door frame, there were 5 magic circles with different colors, arranged in the shape of a pentagon. The magic circle was painted with a pattern that was impossible to understand, and currently, 3 of them were lit up. Feng Bujue took out the key of fire and placed it in his palm. He raised his arm as he walked closer to the door. But even after a while, nothing happened. He put the key away and said, We probably need to collect both keys and finish the quest first because it'll tell us how to recover the seal. So, let's not waste time." The time between the first darkness descent and the second one was 30 minutes, and it has been 18 minutes since the second darkness descent. If the interval between each one is the same, we'd better get to the shopping complex within the next 12 minutes, and kill the monsters there, or else. At that point, Long Almin also charged ahead, leading the way. "Hurry! Let's go!" Even though the man was brash, he did learn from experience. If they ran into another evolved creature, it was definitely him who would bear the brunt of the experience. He had already dealt with one zombie, and he had barely survived. He was not going to wait and die to this one. With Brother Long leading the way, the 5 rushed down the southern street. The plaza where the demonic door sat contained the city map. It was marked with street names, so even without navigation from Feng Bujue, Long Almin managed to find the route to South 15th Street quickly. They ran 1 kilometer within 5 minutes and reached the entrance of the shopping complex. This was an averagely long journey. Basically, it was doable for those who had normal practice in real life, but they would need to rest for at least 2 minutes before they could catch their breath again. There's electricity here. Long Almin had obviously run marathon in real life, and the jog was like child's play to the man. At this point, the story had to explain a new concept, inapparent attributes. This was something that was ubiquitous even in the virtual world, an attribute that could not be quantified. Using Long Almin as example, as a player who was physically fit in real life, the exhaustion that he would experience after completing the same action as another player would be different. The stamina points exhausted by Long Almin were the least after running this 1 kilometer. Even though it was just a difference of a few dozen points, this minute difference would continue to exist even in the later stages of the game. In other words, if there was an upper limit on stamina points, if the two players maintained the same speed as they ran in the same direction until they were exhausted, Long Almin would cover a larger distance than the physically weakest player on the team, Ms. Saddest in this case. This was the difference in inapparent attributes. As another example, take someone who knew how to handle a gun in real life, and one who did not. Both had increased their marksmanship mastery to A, mastery level A, superb. There was a chance for the player to comprehend the skill of said school on their own. At this level, the activation success for relevant skills would be 100%. If both of them used the same skill on the same target, the damage and accuracy of the real-life shooter would be higher. Of course, this minute difference was not something conspicuous enough for players to notice. Only the system would know how much the difference was. Further in the game, the player's overall ability would become stronger. After level 30, they would be no different from experts who could fly through the sky and punch like the wind. By then, the difference caused by inapparent attributes would be even harder to discern. If one had to explain the need of this system, it was to turn one's talent into a type of resource and provide certain players with some advantage. Similar to the police station, it looks like locations that are related to the main quest have things other places don't, like lights and dead bodies, Feng Bujue said. So, what should we do next? Wait for the monster to come attack us? Wang Tanji asked. Do you think the system would be so boring as to repeat the same sequence? Feng Bujue replied. Let's go in. Don't expect another zombie to break through the door. In fact, I believe there'll be a different type of monster. Here. He led the group to walk through the entrance. It was a large glass door that moved simultaneously to the side. It was open, and Feng Bujue walked through readily. The shopping complex was huge, and it was difficult to tell how large it was at first glance. The interior was well lit. The elevator, escalator, and even the vending machines, all the machines that required electricity were working perfectly, but some of the shelves destroyed. The main structure of the building alone had 5 floors. There were 2 cylindrical, transparent elevators on the sides that could take the customers up and down. There were escalators on each floor, and the doors to the fire escape were not locked. Thus, there should be normal stairs beyond them. After walking through the entrance, there was a market that was so large that they could not see its end. Just the checkout counters alone, there were about 30 of them. They lined up like soldiers reporting for duty, forming a wall. There were many different shops on each floor, boutiques, restaurants, KTV, a pool hall, and so on. If there was time, the players would not have minded spending some time there. Feng Bujue walked directly up to the building layout that was next to the entrance. He skimmed over the layout for all the floors immediately, but since this was a shopping complex, it had everything, and that added to the confusion. Where could the key of wood be? A store that sells furniture or toys. Mr. Loneliest volunteered his opinion. If there were 5 Feng Bujues in the team, they would have split up by now, and each would have roamed around a floor and split up the workload. Unfortunately, there was only one Feng Bujue on the team, and splitting up was not going to work. If anything, it would only make them more vulnerable to danger. Just as Feng Bujue was drafting the plan, the group suddenly felt a shake underneath their feet. Another change was happening. The sound of something knocking against the floor came from a few dozen meters ahead of them. The ground bulged upward to form the shape of a volcano. The tiles on the floor cracked, and the nearby shelves were tipped over. This ramming continued 8 more times before a monster crawled to the surface and appeared before their eyes. "I'll bet $5 that we'll get the key after killing it." Feng Bujue pointed at the tree. Half of the monster's body was still submerged in the ground, and the part that was exposed was a burnt trunk that was about 2 meters large in diameter. The rest was an expanding system of branches. Instead of leaves, there were things that looked like sensory organs that dangled from the branches, and of course, they were made of wood as well. Long Aomin was not in the mood to joke. "From how I see it, the monster is immobile, and it can only wave its branches around. In that case, we only need to sneak behind it and avoid its mouths. That should expose its weakness to us." Feng Bujue listened to the man, as he took out his eye of hostility and put it on. After an item was placed inside the backpack, it would be cleaned. Even a weapon covered in blood and guts would come out looking as fresh as a daisy after being placed into and taken out of the backpack. Therefore, the goggles that Feng Bujue wore did not have any lingering smells or detritus. Still, that did not stop the others from imagining it. Let me see first. His current target is. Before Feng Bujue could finish, his expression changed, and then he lifted his head and turned his body around to look at the escalator on the 5th floor. That was a blind spot where the sun could not reach. Hanging onto the edge of the escalator was a humanoid shadow. As the group turned, the thing also realized that it had been discovered. It opened its bat wings, skipped down the walls, and glided on the wind. "What's happening, Batman?" Wang Tanji asked. "I'm more inclined to believe it's a demon." "Get down!" Feng Bujue suddenly screamed as he held his head and collapsed to the ground. Feng Bujue had already realized the monster's hostility target was not on any one of them but the burnt tree monster that had just crawled out from the ground. As he predicted, the demon changed its direction before it hit the ground. It changed its angle and picked up speed as it charged at the tree monster. The tree monster opened its lips to release a low, heavy growl. The sound was powerful, and it caused the wind to rise. The 5 on the ground instinctively covered their ears, but for the flying demon, the roar was nothing. The demon also opened its fanged lips and retorted with a screech. The screech was shrill and sharp like nails scratching on glass, causing one's eardrum to quiver. The 2 monsters were like a deep male baritone and sharp female soprano, creating a concert with their voices. However, they did not bring enjoyment, but endless torment. Chapter 27 First Multiplayer Scenario 11. 2 strange creatures and 2 colliding types of energy. Their voices fought, bloomed, tussled in the air, and caused real damage. The demon's body was torn open like an animal whose body had been feasted upon by a school of piranhas. The flesh and bones underneath the grey skin were exposed. Its flesh was pulled off until only a skeleton remained and collapsed to the ground in a heap. Many signs of decay appeared on the tree monster's body, extending from the trunk to the tips of the branches. These marks were like wounds that refused to heal and continued to cause damage to the tree monster. From the looks of things, it was going to be a happy ending where both monsters died in the battle, but suddenly, darkness chose that time to fall. The group was tossed into a darkness that could swallow anything. Be it outside or inside, even though there were lights around them, all they could see was darkness. This time, the darkness was not accompanied by those strange noises, But this had nothing to do with them having their hands over their ears because, several seconds later, a very clear whisper transferred into their ears. Inferior godlings that refuse to mind your own business, you will pay for what you've done. When the whisper ended, the darkness dissipated, and light returned. They stood up and looked toward the tree to see what kind of evolution it had experienced. Feng Bujue was the first to discover the anomaly. The monster did not look stronger, if anything, the injuries on its body had deepened, and its branches were falling, crumbling into ash. You're the inferior godling mentioned by the voice earlier. Feng Bujue walked to communicate with the monster. Before the other four could understand what he was doing, the tree had already opened its mouth to answer. Humans, go and find the key to recover the seal. We've already found the key of fire, Feng Bujue said. But what happened to this city? Who is behind this? Where is the key of wood? Sam Montia, one of the ruler of Time's servants, betrayed his time and was thus stripped of his godly power, banished to the endless river of time. By then, the branches of the tree had almost completely decayed. And even its trunk had started to turn into dust. The centipede of 100 legs, death without a body. Unfortunately, Sam Montia did not stop there. He used the last of his power to isolate this city from reality, and use it as his hiding place. This place is no longer within the confines of time. It is a pool isolated from the river of time. The bark on the tree's face was rotting. To escape the punishment from the ruler of time, he summoned the demonic door, and once the seal on the door is completely unlocked, it will connect this city with the demonic world. This place will fall under the influence of the Demon King, and this place will be taken out from the ruler of time's domain. Part of humanity formed a contract with Sam Montia. If they helped him open the seal on the door, they would be able to keep their lives, but once the demons swam out from the door, Sam Montia immediately abandoned those people. Before the demons stole the food from him, he sucked the humans greedily into the endless darkness. Only a few survivors managed to escape with 2 of the keys. At this point, the tree had almost perished, but it pushed itself forward. Sam Montia is unable to touch the seal or the keys himself, and he is unable to swallow humans who are close to these 2 things, but the demons can. Therefore, he promised the demons that, at the end of each cycle, he would present them with more power through the darkness. In return, the demons were tasked with finding and killing all the living persons in the city to ensure that no one will be able to reactivate the seal. Where is the key of wood? Feng Bujue asked again. He had a very bad feeling. With how things were going, there was a high chance that this NPC monster was going to die just right before it gave the important clue. The person who escaped with the key of wood died underground, the tree replied. I've opened the door. After my corporeal self has faded away, you can move underground. Its mouth dusted away. Several seconds later, starting from the trunk and spreading to the tip of its branches, the tree turned into a pile of black dust. The tree had died, but it had managed to create a big hole in the ground, a perfect size for the players to crawl underground. Current quest changed, main quest has been updated. After the system audio finished, the quest detail in the quest tab changed to enter the tunnel to find the key of wood. Feng Bujue turned back to look at the rest. We should go to the aisle for daily products to see if we can find any flashlights before we venture forward. The rest had just been given a whole lot to digest, and they had not caught up to speed. Several seconds later, Wang Tanji was the first to ask, Brother Ju, what is happening? Do you mind translating it to us? Feng Bujue was already heading toward the aisle. Based on the battle earlier and the sentence that was spoken in the dark, I realized that the tree monster is not in the same camp as the other monsters that we've met so far. The other 4 followed behind Feng Bujue as they listened to his explanation. Considering that it was not long for this world, I quickly asked it 3 important questions, and it completed the role that was given to it as an NPC. After contributing a fight scene and some scenario details, it also handed us some hints, a passage forward, before logging off the scenario. He walked to a shelf lying on the ground and picked up a random package. As he unwrapped it, he added, based on what the big tree said, only those within the vicinity of the keys or the demonic door will not disappear into darkness like the other humans at this city. This explains the situation at the police station, and it also suggests that the key of wood is not hidden inside this vacant shopping complex. Oh, by the way, I believe we are the exception. Perhaps because we are players, we do not belong under the category of humans within this temporal space, or else we would have been killed by Sam Montier the moment we stepped into this scenario. Feng Bujue paused for a second before continuing. If we are talking about the current situation, actually it's quite clear already. The big boss of this scenario uses the darkness to strengthen all the demons spread through this map around every 30 minutes. The boss himself might not even show up. In fact, he might not even have a real form, but in his place, that demons are a constant threat. The boss goal is most likely to kill all the humans as they can use the keys. Temporarily, this city is connected to the demonic realm, and only by hiding here will the ruler of time be unable to reach him. The way for us to clear this scenario is to find the 2 keys to reactivate the seals on the demonic door. After we succeed, this space will lose its connection to the demonic realm, and the character known as the ruler of time will show up to tear Sam Montier into pieces. This sure is interesting world building. Wang Tanji sighed. Feng Bujue had already found several flashlights. This time, they were all usable, but there were no batteries. These are all usable. Each of us should take 2 just in case. Now we need to look for batteries. Oh, I saw hockey sticks, baseball bats, and gold clubs in the sports aisle. Those things won't have any equip requirement. We should be able to use them. Just like that, the 5 armed themselves. This time, each one had at least 1 normal quality weapon. Ms. Sadist also found a set of kitchen knives that were slightly longer than Wang Tanji's fruit knife. Most of them grabbed 1 each. Xiao Ten finally had the chance to abandon the fruit knife that he had obtained during his tutorial. Only Long Aomin did not choose a kitchen knife. Instead, he opted for a Chinese cleaver, the extra heavy one that was normally used for hacking bones. It seemed like the man preferred to use heavier weapons. It took them 10 minutes to do all that. Considering that there might be monsters underground and the time limit before the next darkness descent, they did not waste any time, and got down into the hole with Long Aomin leading the way. When they first crawled into the hole, it felt cramped and oppressive. They stepped on loose soil, and the road forward tilted down. There was no light, but after a short journey, they found themselves in a relatively wider underground sewer. At least they were able to stand upright. The tree had broken through the path between the sewer and the area underneath the shopping complex. Instead, the person who had the key of wood had merely taken the sewer. Since the tree had given a direct hint that said person had died underground, the chance of monsters hiding in the sewer was quite high. The circular sewer gave the group a strange sense of oppression. The air around them seemed as if it would coagulate at any moment. But of course, that was their imagination. The real threat was the horrible stench and the dirty things that floated around their feet. Ever since Ms. Sadist had gotten down there, her face turned up. She kept her flashlight aimed to hide, refusing to look at the things on the ground. She followed her boyfriend and stayed at the back of the group. Long Aomin held the shield in one hand and the baseball bat in another while leading the way. If any monster suddenly appeared to ambush them, he would greet it with a bat to the head. If the baseball bat did not kill it, then there was still the cleaver to add a few chops. Feng Bujue and Wang Tanji walked in the middle of the group, ready to provide Long Aomin with support. There was only one path in the sewer. The left side of the hole where they appeared out of was closed off. There were only some cracks where water was flowing through, so the chance of monsters ambushing them from that side was low. Letting Ms. Saddest and Mr. Loneliest close up the group meant that they were relatively safe. They moved in that formation for 5 minutes. Look at that. Long Aomin suddenly stopped to say, right there, that's a dead body. Feng Bujue stretched his neck forward to make his vantage point higher than Long Aomin's shoulders. He noticed that, after another 10 meters, they would have reached the end of the sewer. The steel gate blocked their way while the water continued to flow through the gap. In the corner, their flashlights shone on a dead body. Chapter 28 First Multiplayer Scenario 12. Based on our previous experience, when we find a certain thing or monster, the quest will be triggered. Feng Bujue was only halfway through the sentence when the dead body suddenly stood up, and at a same time, a creepy laugh echoed in the group's ears. It slowly raised its head, and the face that was slowly being lit up by the flashlights was covered in a layer of shadows. Its facial features were barely discernible, and the skin was as green as lead. Is he still alive? Long Aomin asked in a soft voice. Still alive? Feng Bujue walked around Long Aomin to head toward the thing that looked like a dead body. That would explain many things. The laughter earlier could be the survivor's joyful manifestation after realizing he'll be saved. He had been wearing the goggles, so he was clear that the man's hostility was placed on him. Seeing Feng Bujue's approach, the monster instantly made a second response. Ah! Ms. Saddest suddenly screamed. Not only her, even Mr. Loneliest was spooked and yelped. Wang Tanji's scream was stuck in his throat. His face was white, and his heart stopped for several seconds. Only Long Aomin's response was relatively normal, but his hair was standing on end, and he sucked in a cold breath. Various decaying arms reached out from the surrounding pipes. They formed a curtain, dark and eerie. The echoing groaning and pleading filled the sewer and hit them like a wave. Ms. Saddest staggered back in panic and waved the golf club blindly in panic. Her boyfriend tried to calm her down, but he almost got hit in the process. Wang Tanji was frozen in fear. His eyes were round with shock, and he did not dare move. His hand that held the knife was shivering, and his palm was slick with sweat. Several seconds later, Long Aomin shouted, "Don't panic. These are all illusions." He had not lost his ability to think and instantly realized that the arms were just an illusion, because he noticed some of the arms that poked up from the ground went through his leg. But he did not feel anything. Even if they are real, they are not able to touch us. Long Aomin screamed again. Ms. Saddest finally regained some of her senses. Mr. Loneliest hugged her tight, and whispered comforting words into her ears. Even though he was afraid, seeing how flustered his girlfriend was, it made him realize that he had to be steady. He told himself repeatedly that it was just a game. No matter how scary things were, it was fake and temporary. About 10 meters away, Feng Bujue walked confidently toward the monster. The scary images and sounds did not affect him in the slightest. The man did not even blink. He held the baseball ball in his hand and loosened up his shoulders, like he was getting ready to swing the bat. Seeing that its skill did not affect Feng Bujue, the dead body came up with a third reaction. It turned from a male body covered in tattered clothes into a living, breathing beautiful woman. She looked around 20 and wore a sexy black strappy dress. Her skin was fair as snow, and practically half of her breasts were hanging out of the dress. Her legs were shimmering, and a seductive smile was hanging on her lips. Feng Bujue was startled for a second. Then, he surprisingly placed the ball back in his backpack. The male teammates behind him saw this and instantly tossed him a condescending look, even though internally they understood why he did that. I almost forgot. Feng Bujue just put away the bat and quickly retrieved the wrench. Since it's a humanoid creature, attacking with this special effect weapon will earn me some skill points. He said that easily, raised the wrench, and rained heavy blows down on the monster's skull. The wrench fell on the monster's head again and again. The black block splashed all over the place, and it was a mentally scarring scene to witness. When Feng Bujue's attack connected with the physical body of the monster, it changed back to its original form, and the surrounding illusions disappeared after the monster suffered serious damage. The four at the back silently looked at Feng Bujue's relentless, cruel, and highly effective attacks. 3 of them had their terror points fluctuating constantly because their minds were wandering, mainly thinking about whether there was a hidden meaning to the IGN Feng Bujue. After the monster's skull was completely bashed in, Feng Bujue searched through the monster's shirt pocket and found the key of wood. The attribute was similar to the key of fire. Current quest completed, main quest updated. After collecting the key, there was a tick on the right side of the quest, and a new quest appeared. Return to the demonic door to reactivate the seal. Feng Bujue turned around to announce, "We are done here, let's go." Brother Feng. Long Aomin said, "How did you know the monster would be so fragile?" "I knew that once it stood up," Feng Bujue replied. "When those arms showed up, they only confirmed my belief." This type of monster was obviously used to raise the players' terror points. If the players were afraid of getting close due to fear, then the illusions would only get scarier. Even if it failed to force anyone offline, it would at least ruin our overall rating review. When it turned into the beautiful woman, it meant that it was running out of options, and turned into something that might attract me to buy some time. He suddenly scratched his chin to think. But wait a minute, how did the system know about my sexual orientation? What if I'm homosexual or bisexual? What would it change into then? You used your ID to log into the forum, right? Mr. Loneliest said. Wasn't there a question like that when we filled in the user information? So, the system knew because the company has my data, Feng Bujue mumbled to himself. That could be it. Either way, let's get moving. For the return journey, the group moved as fast as they could. All of them had a feeling that the scenario would not end just like that. Even if the final boss known as Sam Montier did not show up, there had to be a powerful last boss that they needed to face before the scenario ended. It was impossible to reach the door before the descent of the next darkness, but they could at least try to defeat the boss before 2 darkness descents. As they expected, on their way back to the plaza, darkness fell. This was the 4th time that this had happened since they entered the scenario. Counting the 10 or so minutes before the first darkness, they had been inside the scenario for almost 2 hours. When the darkness fell this time, they did not hear anything. There was no breathing, whispering, or cackling. Feng Bujue thought this was a bad omen. In this type of horror game, anything that broke the established routine meant that things were heading in a bad direction. 3 minutes after the darkness left, they reached the plaza. At this point, even Long Aomin was panting. After 2 hours of running, fighting, walking, and moving stuff, most of their stamina points were low. Ms. Saddest and Mr. Loneliest had exhausted around 400 stamina points each. They were respectively level 6 and 7. Counting the stamina points that were recovered through rest, they both had around 200 stamina points. Long Aomin had exhausted the most. Just the lightning bash that he used when they encountered the monster baby had burned through 300 stamina points. On top of that, he had been tanking when they fought the zombie, and the total exhaustion was over 700 stamina points. Actually, that was relatively considered low. Due to his inapparent attribute, the exhaustion to his stamina point when he was running was lower than others, and it was the same for combat. The difference piled up, and combined with the recovery time, he had 289,000 stamina points left. After comparing those three, the fact that Wang Tanji and Feng Bujue, two level 5 players who had joined the combat, still had less than 100 stamina points left could be considered a miracle. The quest has been updated. We should be able to use the keys, right? Wang Tanji asked between breaths. Feng Bujue walked ahead of the group. Facing the door, he took out 2 keys and placed them on his palm. Several dozen seconds passed, but nothing happened. This isn't right, Long Almin said after noticing this. How come there's still no reaction? No. Something did happen. Feng Bujue looked toward the horizon. Look. The plaza was open, so they could look several hundred meters into the distance. Currently, from various corners of the cities, more than 1,000 monsters had surged out from the hidden corners. They were shaped differently, but most could be split into 2 categories, the berserk, angry type and the cunning, hunter type. These monsters moved slowly, but their appearance definitely caused the morale to drop. When that dissipated, in its place was a heightened sense of fear. How is this possible? What did we do wrong? Mr. Lonelius started to panic, and his pitch naturally rose. There's no way for us to survive this. Feng Bujue was also surprised by this development. Sam Montier is unable to approach these keys, or the seals around the door. He can't appear personally to deal with us. The demons refuse to get close to this place. But they are not afraid of the keys. This means that they are afraid of this door, or rather, the realm that is behind this door. That is why there are no demons roaming this incredibly large plaza. Now that we've closed in on this place, they've been forced to do so. We should try our best to stick as close to the door as possible, and see what happens next. What if they don't care about the demonic door, and launch themselves at us? Long Almin asked. Then, we'll retreat behind the door, Feng Bujue answered. Brother Ju, that's the demonic realm. What if there are more demons behind the door? Wang Tanji argued. That might not be it. I suspect it's a space like a prison behind the door, and now that all the inmates have escaped, perhaps the space behind it is currently empty. Furthermore, does it make a difference where we die? In the end, we'll just return to the login lobby. The group soon reached the door, and they stood with the demonic door behind them. Feng Bujue was still going through the scenario story in his mind. The thing that grabbed his attention was the talk of a cycle that the tree mentioned. What kind of cycle was happening inside this isolated city? Perhaps by answering this riddle, they would know the rhythm that Sam Montier had set up, his weakness, or the way to restore the seal. Many clues floated around in his mind, but there was not much time left for Feng Bujue. He arranged the clues in his mind. A pool isolated from the river of time. Darkness that falls every half an hour. The disappearance of the whispering in the dark. Chapter 29, First Multiplayer Scenario 13. The surrounding army of monsters was like a low-hanging cloud that was closing in on them. Since they could see it, they knew that tactics like running through them were unrealistic. A group of 5 level 30 players would have to pause before deciding to rush through this army, much less their group that had an average level of 6.6. Brother Feng, they are still moving in, Long Almin reminded Feng Bujue, who appeared to be thinking. It's fine, let me think about it, Feng Bujue said. Based on this situation, retreating into the door is the last option given to us by the game. There will be a hard boss to fight inside, and after winning it, we'll get a normal. Clear. Something like, even though the players have successfully escaped this space, Sam Montier continues to rule over the time-isolated city. That's fine. I don't want to die for no reason, but if the demons really charge at us, we should retreat. Behind the door, Long Almin said. Feng Bujue nodded. He sat down on the ground and closely studied the two keys in his hands. The army that was closing in did not seem to affect the man much. He placed his elbow on his leg and kept his head lowered. His fingers tapped his forehead lightly. Several seconds later, he slowly lifted his head, and his fingertips slid down his nose. Throughout this process, his gaze slowly moved upward until his eyes landed on the hazy moon in the sky. Suddenly, there was a glint in his eyes, and an idea appeared. Do you still remember what the system said before we started the scenario? Feng Bujue said. Wang Tanji looked at the army that was less than 100 meters from them, and his breathing was getting frantic. All it did was tell us that we are in a city, the time is night, and we are the sole survivors, didn't it? Feng Bujue thought back to it and said, the second part of the introduction. Everything was normal until one night, when the sun set, and never rose again. The floating dark clouds covered the moon, which tried to cast its lonely light on this silent city. He recited the statement without missing a word. What about it? Long Almin asked. The statement is not telling us that it is nighttime, Feng Bujue said. It is pointing at the phenomenon of the cycle. So far, have you seen any clock or machine that can tell the time? The mind of the four others were muddled. As the threat closed in, observable to the naked eye, they became more panicked. The closer the monsters were, the realer they became. So, it was impossible to expect them to be able to think calmly at a situation like this. Before even trying to think about it, Ms. Satis grumbled, who would remember something like that? How is that related to our current situation? The rhythm behind this scenario, the so-called cycle and the darkness. I understand it, Feng Bujue answered. If we view the time inside this virtual world as a linear line, then the two ends of the line will extend endlessly. The line will never reach its end, and we will never be able to see its beginning. But for this city, the time is only a cut from an endless line. There is a definite end and beginning. The line stretches for about 30 minutes. He stood up and gestured with his hands. He pulled this line into a circle, connecting the beginning and the end. And this city only runs in this circle. Those creatures and ourselves, we don't belong to this world. We are inside the circle and not on the line. Therefore, Sam Montier cannot use his power to swallow us. He can only threaten us by pushing things on the line toward us. Mr. Loneliest was baffled. He stared at Feng Bujue and said, My brother. My dearest brother. I'm not good at math. Things like mathematics are 3% talent, 7% hard work, and 90% destiny. I'm not talking about geometry. I'm just using a circle to describe this concept. Feng Bujue continued to explain slowly. Brother Feng. No, Big Brother Ju. You don't need to explain this us. Really, we leave it to you to understand these things. Just tell us what we can do other than retreating behind the door. Long Almin became another person who referred to Feng Bujue as Big Brother, and he was 4 years older than Feng Bujue. Actually, there's nothing special that we need to do to recover the seal, Feng Bujue said and held the two keys in his hand. It was no different from what he had been doing earlier. So, you're telling us to wait? Wang Tanji was almost screaming. The army was approaching, only several dozen meters were left. This is a test of bravery, to see if we have the guts to stand and wait until the last second. Feng Bujue even managed to laugh. Ha ha, this system sure likes to come up with these kinds of plots that only allow you escape at the last minute. But we are not escaping. All you're doing is holding up the keys. Mr. Loneliest yelled. At the police station, I said the puzzle of the key of fire is too easy. I take that back. Feng Bujue's thoughts started to jump again. 69185, it is actually another hint. If you combine it with the element of time, everything will be clear as day. Brother Ju. Is this really the time? Before Long Almin finished, Feng Bujue cut him off. The minute hand of the clock starts to turn clockwise from the number 6, then it reaches 9, this is 15 minutes. Then, from 9 to 1, that'll be 20 minutes. From 1 to 8 is 35 minutes. Finally, from 8 to 5 is 45 minutes. He kept the keys elevated. Under the circumstance where the minute hand doesn't turn back, or the time doesn't rewind, 69185, it takes 115 minutes overall, and we've been in the scenario for. He looked at the monsters that had their claws lashing and jaws open, but he said calmly, if my calculation is not wrong, it is now, the time has come. The light from the keys interrupted him, shooting up into the sky. Even the air around them felt fresher. The two keys swirled around as they rose into the air. They stuck into the missing parts of the door, and the pattern on the seals lit up. The seals of fire and wood were reactivated. The pentagon reappeared, and the door started to slowly close. The monsters reacted strangely, and they hissed like they were dying. Without waiting for a signal, they dispersed at a speed that was much faster than when they gathered. They charged away from the plaza, heedless of the direction. What is happening? Long Almin had already his shield raised. He was ready to start a war, but to his surprise, in a short amount of time, things had changed so completely. The other three's minds seemed to have short-circuited. They had been angered by the serenity Feng Bujue showed when they were pressed by the despair due to the army, but at that moment, they did not know what to say. Well, they could not be blamed. The joy from surviving certain death would need some time before it exploded. You need to bring the keys to the door, and at the 115th minute, the seal will reactivate. That's all, Feng Bujue explained. Regarding the monsters, it's even simpler. The system purposely arranged for them to get as close to the door as possible before the time lined up, to force us to escape into the door. The fact that they were moving so slowly was obviously to create a dramatic effect, to create pressure. If collecting the keys is the trigger for the event of the monsters surrounding us, Wang Tanji asked, then, what if we came sooner or later? Completing that quest earlier than we did is very difficult. The scenario is arranged based on the team's overall ability. I believe we've done a wonderful job already, we were only several minutes off the time. Don't forget. We happened to enter the police station first before we found the quest. We were spared the need to retrace our steps, if we did not, the few minutes would have been used there. Then, we were held off for a while at the shopping complex. If we found the flashlights and crawled into the hole directly without going to search for weapons, we might be faster. But we took less than a minute to deal with the illusion, so we made up lost time then. In any case, with the gain and loss of time, the limit set by the system hasn't changed. If we reached here earlier with the two keys, the same event would happen, but if we were late, naturally we would have missed the time for the seal to activate, and in the end, we'd be forced to go through the door. Then, what happens now? We've cleared the mission. Long Almin said. How come there's no system notification? Current quest completed, main quest. Right then, the system audio appeared, but to everyone's surprise, the system did not finish. Ants from another world, do you know what you've done? This sentence entered the group's mind. It cut off the system, and the voice that spoke was the whispering that had appeared during the third darkness. Feng Bujue opened the menu to look. Even though the system did not finish, there was a tick next to the quest who asked them to recover the seal, and a new quest had appeared, survive through Sam Montier's assault. Do you see the new mission? Feng Bujue sounded like. He thought this was no biggie. The boss actually has a corporeal form. Wang Tanji gasped. Based on my speculation, Sam Montier doesn't have a real form, or rather, based on his setting, his real existence persists in a much higher dimension. So if he wants to appear before us, he needs to adapt into a material that the dimension that we are in can perceive, Feng Bujue replied. Just like how Galactus has the form of a purple uncle-like pervert, if Sam Montier wants to deal with us personally, he has to adapt a corporeal form. Only then will he be able to deal physical damage to us. Can you speak human, please? Wang Tanji sighed. Look, just like that. Feng Bujue suddenly raised his finger to point at something around the plaza. Right then, the cloud disappeared, and the moon showered its glorious glow down on the rocky surface of the plaza. The group followed his finger, and they saw, on the ground, a circular shadow around 5 meters in diameter. It was a shadow that was curiously thick. It looked more like an abyss that could even suck in the light. Chapter 31 Multiplayer Scenario 14. Several seconds later, in the middle of the shadow pool, a black humanoid shape started to stand up. It was around 2 meters tall, and its body was wreathed in that coagulating darkness, like a 3D shadow. However, it was not a play of light that was formed after an object blocked the travel of light, but an actual mass that existed in 3D space. The pool isolated from the river. Feng Bujue ignored Sam Montier's less-than-stellar entrance and continued his earlier topic. The analogy should be changed to a whirlpool outside the river of time to be more fitting. Even though Einstein said that time and space are a misunderstanding of human knowledge, and they are mere factor to describe the motion of mass, in this fantasy world, we can treat them as a more realistic substance. Here, time is something that is constantly in motion like water in the river, always flowing. If the water stops flowing, the river cannot be called a river anymore. Using that analogy as a basis, since Sam Montier cut off this particular space, he had to remove a part of the time as well, or else everything within this space would be suspended in stasis, including himself. But the water that he could siphon from the river is limited. The maximum that he could accomplish was 30 minutes. These 30 minutes only belong to this city and endlessly repeat themselves. Whenever the cycle ends, there are several seconds to act as buffer, and that is when the darkness falls. In other words, the darkness is the connection that ties each cycle together. After the buffer, a new cycle begins. The shadow underneath Sam Montier started to move. The shape alongside the pool of darkness, that the feet were connected to move toward the group of 5. Brother Ju, do you have any suggestions? Wang Tanji did not dare act rashly and quickly asked for guidance. The other members were also waiting for Feng Bujue to say something. There shouldn't be anything special that we need to do, Feng Bujue explained. Based on the plot, the difficulty shouldn't be higher than the choice of crossing through the door. Don't interrupt, I'm not yet done. Based on everything we've witnessed so far, the descent of darkness is a phenomenon that occurs at the connecting point of the cycles, and not something produced by Sam Montier. But that doesn't explain why the monsters become stronger after each descent. There is only one logical explanation. The buffer period between each cycle is the only time when Sam Montier can activate his full power. He can only do something within that short period, like sharing his power with the demons, or swallowing the humans inside the city. Of course, he had already swallowed everything at the city before we arrived, and since we are technically guests from another dimension, he cannot do the same to us. You're trying to say Sam Montier is actually not that strong. At least weaker than the demons that we might face if we went through the demonic door. Long Almin asked. If I had to give an example, it's like the few of us are trapped inside a balloon, and we're as weak as ants, while Sam Montier is outside the balloon, but is also only as strong as a common man. There is space between the inside and outside the balloon that prevents the two dimensions from overlapping. He is unable to burst the balloon, and can only use his fingers to grab at it. What we are seeing now is nothing more than the trace left by his fingers as he applies pressure to the balloon. Feng Bujue scratched his chin. But personally, I believe that his power level is not as weak as you might think. At the very least, it is not going to be hard for him to kill us. Hey, then why are you being so cavalier about this? It's not the time to talk, start running. Mr. Loneliest grabbed Ms. Saddest, and was about to turn to run. Before he took a step, he heard the system audio. World dash. Building explored and unlocked. Player. Feng Bujue obtains 240 skill points as a reward. The team can now access the rules of this scenario through the expand function in the quest tab. If I didn't say the words, how do you expect me to gain the skill points? Feng Bujue said, you have to vocally explain the world building before the system can confirm that you've unlocked it. Sam Montier's shadow was only several dozen meters away from Feng Bujue, but even so, the man did not plan to run. Furthermore, didn't I tell you that we don't need to do anything? Since the demonic door has been closed. The shadow suddenly picked up speed, and the human shape in the shadow grew rapidly in size to morph into a shadowy hand that slammed at Feng Bujue. But at the last moment, the large hand froze in midair. From its title, Feng Bujue lowered his head and walked out from underneath the large hand. The ruler of time is an entity that will never be late. Soon, Sam Montier's shadow drastically shrunk like a giant force was pulling him back into the tear in space. One day, you will pay the price. Time is on my side. Her. Now that doesn't sound good. With a line like this, it means that we'll most likely meet the boss again, Feng Bujue uttered with a smile. The shadow struggled like a beast that fell into quicksand. But it was to no avail. The shadow on the ground dwindled in size before disappearing completely. Travelers from another world, thank you for what you've done. After this place has been cleansed, I shall allow it to flow back into the river of time. A voice that was different from Sam Montier's appeared in the group's mind. The voice sounded like the typical wise elder in a video game. You have obtained the reward given by the ruler of time. Please inspect it during your rating review, the system audio said. Current quest complete. All main quests completed. You have completed the scenario. Auto-teleportation in 180 seconds. The time limit for team mode's teleportation was longer. This was probably considering that there might be communication between players. Wang Tanji collapsed to the ground. After his taut nerves were given a chance to relax, his terror points instantly sunk to the bottom. Ms. Saddest and Mr. Loneliest also sighed in relief. It felt so nice to survive until the end and clear the mission. Long Almin acted rather calmly. He put away his weapon and shield. In the last 60 seconds, he asked Feng Bujue, Brother Feng, I still have one question that I do not understand. What is it? Feng Bujue replied. It is something about time, Long Almin explained. Like you said, when we entered the scenario, we have not seen anything like a clock, or a machine to record the time. Then how did you manage to calculate the time between each darkness interval? I remember you said it was about 30 minutes, when we arrived at the demonic door. Because I've been keeping track of time, Feng Bujue answered. Once entering the scenario, I noticed an anomaly. How come there weren't any electronic clocks at the subway station? After we reached the surface, I still did not see anything clock-like. Therefore, after the first darkness descended, I started to keep track of time. The second darkness fell when we were around the police station, and according to my calculations, it was about 30 minutes. Yes, that's what I'm asking. How did you keep track of time without a watch or clock? By counting it, of course, Feng Bujue answered. I've been counting in my mind, every 300 equals to 5 minutes. Whenever we are not doing any active activities, I replace it with the counting of my pulse. My heart pulses 77 times every minute. He was familiar with his heart rate, because he had spent a long period of time at the hospital and had been through many checkups, so he was familiar with his physical condition. Counting the pulse is actually more precise than counting numbers, and it is something that you can do without giving it much attention. I suppose you can call it a lazy way of doing it. When I need to train my focus, I stop counting pulse, but start to count numbers instead. The difference between the two is not that big. If you don't believe me, you can take half an hour or an hour to try it at home. There is no need to stop your schedule to do this. After all, it is nothing more than an exercise of patience. There's no need. I understand, thank you for the lesson. Not only Long Almin, even the couple overheard this and looked at Feng Bujue like he was some kind of monster. Wang Tanji had long gotten used to this. After knowing Feng Bujue for so many years, he had been through many such situations before. If someone told Xiao Tan that the Earth had been infiltrated by aliens, he would be 80% suspicious, but if the person told him that Feng Bujue was actually an alien, he might actually believe it. Anyway, it's time for us to part. The countdown is about to finish. Goodbye and thanks for the game, Feng Bujue said. Ms. Saddest and Mr. Loneliest gave words of appreciation and bade farewell to the other three before leaving in a halo of white light. Long Almin did not leave immediately. After the two disappeared, he asked, Brother Feng, Brother Wang, do you mind if we become friends? He did not make this suggestion to hope to hug Feng Bujue's leg. It was still too early for that. Today was the first day of closed beta. Be it professional players, normal players, or casual players, there was not much difference in level. Even though Feng Bujue had plenty of potential, it was hard to tell if he would have a constant online presence. Long Almin wanted to gain this friend mainly because Feng Bujue had handed him a piece of excellent quality equipment without hesitation. Even though the weapon itself was not that valuable, finding a trustworthy teammate was hard, and based on that alone, this was a man that he could call a friend. Wang Tanji was obviously in the same team as Feng Bujue, so of course, Long Almin could not just add Feng Bujue. Furthermore, from the fight with the zombie, even though the man was cowardly, he was good at fighting. He was not a pro player, but he was certainly not dead weight. Sure, we'll discuss this further in the login lobby. Let's go check out the rating review first, Feng Bujue answered. The three then left the scenario. After all the players left, the demonic door suddenly shuddered like an unknown creature was ramming against the sealed door on the other side. The man was enveloped by white light, and the next second, Feng Bujue found himself in the login lobby. The system audio said, "You've successfully reached level 11, and your stamina points have increased to 100. Title system unlocked. You've gained the title, Cold-Blooded Skullcracker." Then, he moved his gaze to the screen on the wall, and the screen was showing his rating review after clearing the scenario. Part 3 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe, so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.